Are you thinking about getting your real estate license this year, but you're just unsure if being an agent is even worth it any longer? Because you may have noticed, with agent commissions under attack and new tech like AI disrupting just about every industry, you may be even wondering if this profession is going to be around much longer. So today, let's look at the economics of being a real estate agent and truly analyze line item by line item if it's worth it being a real estate agent any longer. And be sure to stay to the end, because I want to share with you a secret strategy that our agents are using to generate at least one client per week every single week. Now, if we're just meeting, welcome to Agent Startup Academy, where we train the next generation of top producing agents. All right, so let's talk about getting your real estate license, because the process is pretty similar throughout the country. Regardless of where you are in the country, you're gonna need to test and get your real estate license. You're gonna have a state portion and a national portion. Now, in order to sit for that exam, you do need to take courses. As an example, in Texas, there's 6 courses you need to pass, which amount to 180 credits. So let's talk about the cost associated to this. To get your credits, you can get them online or you can do them in person. Now, to get all of your course credits online, it's gonna cost you less than $500. But if you go to real estate school in person like I did in Plano, Texas, it's gonna cost you over $1,000. Now, that's just to get the credits out of the way. You still need to pay for the exam, and when it comes to the actual state exam, it's gonna cost you over $200, which is comprised of the exam itself, getting the fingerprints that you need done, and also a background check. Now, all of those are expenses just to get a piece of paper that says that you can practice being a real estate agent, although you still can't practice being a real estate agent until you hang your license with a brokerage. But before I get to the cost of joining a brokerage, let's talk about a very little known fee or collection of fees that a lot of agents don't factor into their budget. And that's joining a real estate association, which is gonna give you access to the MLS. This one part alone is gonna cost you over $700 in many markets, because you're paying for the MLS access, and it's not by month. Most of the time you're gonna be paying quarterly. And then you're also gonna be paying your association dues. Here, once again, you're not paying that by month. No. They're gonna charge you for the year. Now, for cash flow management, especially starting out, we would all love it if it was monthly, but they ding you right up front. So before we've even joined a brokerage, which again, as a reminder, you do have to hang your real estate license with a broker in order to practice real estate, you're already in about $2,000. Now comes one of the more challenging parts, especially if you have no relationships in the real estate business already, and that's joining a brokerage, because every single broker and their grandmother is gonna give you a call trying to recruit you, because every single real estate brokerage needs agents to do the business. And it may be very challenging for you to decide which brokerage to go with, because for the most part, they're all saying the same thing. They're gonna offer leads, they're gonna offer support, they're gonna offer this, that, and the other, and you don't know who's real and who's not. But I digress. Let's actually talk about the cost. If you go with a very inexpensive brokerage that's gonna charge you little to no money per month and will only charge you a transaction fee, you're essentially spending less than $100 per month. If you go with the transaction model, where a brokerage will charge you on the transactions that you close, you're probably gonna be paying little to no money per month. And as you can probably imagine, in life, there's no such thing as free. So what that means is that you're probably not gonna get a lot of training, a lot of support, a lot of nothing. You're essentially just being allowed to hang your real estate license with that brokerage, and you're on your own. Now, if you go to some of the more expensive and fee-heavy brokerages out there, I'm not gonna name any by name, you're gonna be spending $100, $200, $300, $500. But a good average, just to give you a solid number, you're looking at about $250 monthly. Now, this is once again just enough for you to practice real estate. You may not need or even want or desire any of the additional bells and whistles that your brokerage offers. Doesn't matter. You're going to be paying monthly. And what you're also going to be paying for as well is going to be a split, meaning that once you close a transaction, there's a portion of that commission that's going to be sent over to your broker as their split. So for a newer agent, it's not uncommon to see, at least for the first transactions, a 50-50 split, a 60-40 split, 70-30, something like that. Now, once again, that's when the transaction actually happens. This is when there's actual commissions to be paid. Before then, you're just adding up all of the fees. So if you do some quick math at this point, now that you have your license, now that you've joined the association, now that you've joined a brokerage, you're about $2,000 to $2,500 in the hole. So at this point, you might be thinking, you know what? It's actually worth it to get my real estate license because it's not all that expensive. I've spent $2,000 on going to Vegas the other week, so I might as well do it. Well, kudos to you, nice flex, but you really haven't done anything up until this point because now you have the very challenging part of actually getting business. And that in and of itself can be expensive. Now you're starting to look at the marketing and advertising expenses. You're talking about yard signs, you're talking about promotional items, you're talking about running digital ads. These expenses do add up. For as lean as you want to make your marketing spend every single month, you're still spending $100 to $500 monthly. And that's just trying to procure business. If you want to be an aggressive agent where you're marketing intently, you're looking at over $1,000 a month. As an example, just for our real estate team alone here in Dallas-Fort Worth, we're spending over $10,000 a month. And that's because we're providing a lot of leads, a lot of support. So our agents have ISAs, transaction coordinators, general VAs to count on. And there's a ton of training that we do in real time as well. But if you're not going into a team model that's this well supported, you are coming out of pocket for all of these expenses. All right, so now let's go into some actual numbers. Let's really break it down so we can start making some of this $2,500 investment back. Let's use a conservative number, and let's say we're in the Dallas market and it's about $300,000 for the house that we sell. And let's also say you charge 3% for your buyer agent services. Now again, we're gonna keep this very simple. We're gonna assume we're on the buyer side. If we're on the listing side, then there's some additional expenses that we would need to incur with, like photography, the yard signs, the open houses that we're gonna host, but let's leave that aside for a second. Let's focus on the buyer agency, which might cost you a Starbucks cup and a bit of gas money. So let's say we successfully help a buyer buy, and now we've earned $9,000 in GCI, gross commission income. And because we're a newer agent, chances are we're gonna have a 60-40 split. 60% for us, 40% for the brokerage and other mentors that might be helping us with our first transactions. So we're not netting $9,000, not even close. We're looking at about $5,400. And in terms of additional fees, in addition to the split, you're probably looking at $150, give or take. It's gonna depend on the brokers that you're a part of. They might charge broker review, errors and omissions, possibly your transaction fees. They add up. So let's just say $150. So just to close that one transaction, your net is going to be a little bit over $5,200. Now again, I'm giving you a very realistic scenario. Yes, there are transaction shops out there. Yes, there's 80-20 splits out there, 7-30 splits out there. But typically those higher splits are for agents that already have experience under their belt. Now here's the one thing that most new agents miss, and that is saving money for taxes. Being a real estate agent is a sales job, and most sales jobs are 1099s. So that means that your brokerage is gonna pay you outright, and it's your responsibility to save money for taxes. So please save 30% of what you just earned to make sure that you have enough to cover those taxes when they're due. And it's at this point finally that you have the net number that you can go and pay groceries with. And I'm so sorry that I'm gonna rain on your parade in the very next sentence, because that amount that, yeah, you can go out and get groceries, pay rent and all that fun stuff, that is true. That's not actually how much you brought home, because that amount is not really what you took home from doing that transaction. You also need to factor in how much you spent in order to get that transaction. Did you have to spend $200 on a Facebook ad? Did you have to run some sort of promotion for the Little League? What did you have to do in order to get that opportunity? Even if you say that it cost you nothing to get that business, I'm gonna call BS. Why? Well, because you cannot do this business for free. There is some sort of cost that you had to incur in order to generate that business. So let's just say, to be fair and be conservative, it cost us $300 to get that one transaction, to get that one lead that we ultimately closed. So when it's all said and done for that one transaction, in order for you to close it, you're looking at actually netting just over $3,000. And depending on your perspective, you might be super ecstatic. Why? Well, because you just recouped your entire investment to get into the industry. What other profession can you have such a large payoff for the amount of money that you invested? So now that we've unpacked the numbers, let's really answer that question. Is it worth being a real estate agent today? Now, it's going to depend market to market, but if you're looking to make a full-time income, you need to be closing at least 10 transactions per year. This is going to give you enough latitude to cover your fees, cover a reasonable amount of marketing spend, pay your taxes, and have a livable income. Now again, it's going to depend market to market, but we're looking at about 10 transactions. But if you actually want to build wealth in real estate, you really should be closing over 20 transactions per year. That's going to give you the income to take those vacations. That's going to give you the income to take big swings with marketing budgets. That's going to give you the income to actually not feel so stressed every single month. So you're looking at about 20 transactions in order to accomplish that per year. Now, for some pro tips to help you on your way, schedule when you will work. Define how much money you actually need per year. Save at least 6 months worth of expenses before you jump into the industry, and spend 80% of your time prospecting for new business. And if you're trying to get a client immediately, please DM or text your sphere of influence what you're seeing on the screen right now. This is what I promised you earlier that our agents are sending to their sphere of influence and securing a client weekly. Now, while you spend 80% of your time prospecting, spend 10% of your time learning and 10% of your time implementing. Now, if you're looking to launch your real estate career nationally or here locally in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, my information is down below. And you're going to want to watch this video next.